The boy rubbed his stinging head and opened his eyes to the world again. His father, the mayoress, stared at him with disappointment and called him the shame of the family. But they had no idea that Yurin could learn every martial art in the world. Right now, he was just a fat, ugly kid with no power at all. In the Kingdom of Crisis, a huge army marches toward the northern border. Duke Ellen stands frozen in shock, screaming that it can't be true. The zombies wake up and start walking toward them. Ellen says the numbers are wilder than he could ever guess, and now there's that nightmare poison mist hanging in the air. The soldier points up at the sky, and the Duke jumps in surprise. There's even an undead knight named Durian. Not even one of the 10 living high-level knights could promise to win against him. He admits their strength isn't enough to win, so they must pull back and hold their ground for now. Ellen shakes her head and says they can't do it because the wall is already broken, and if the gate falls, their kingdom will be lost. No matter what they have to give up, they must stop them today, but something suddenly flashes right past his side. A young man rides his horse onto the battlefield, his crimson cape flying behind him as he takes command. Ellen asks who is rushing forward so boldly, and the soldier realizes who it is. They got fresh strength from the southern land of Sharp Rocks, the home of the dagger fighter known as Yurin. The soldier shouts that his foe is Durian, but a dagger won't do any harm unless he drives it deep into the zombies to slice its head off. Ellen is so shocked that the knight starts to wonder if Durian is actually emerging. He can't believe it as Yurin hurls his daggers, each one hitting a zombie and melting its monstrous form away, making everyone think he must be a saint sent from the heavens. Yurin thought it was silly to be ridiculous, so he just took whatever was good for his body for himself. 6 months ago, the young man jolted awake out of the blue. He isn't sure where he is when a maid walks up to the young master. Yurin lifts his head to say she's a beauty, yet her strange clothes and the sword she carries make him pause. The woman asked how the young master was feeling. She says she will call the priest this time. Yurin reaches out to catch the woman's eye. He says he just wants to ask something, but the girl is already gone. He pulls himself out of bed, completely confused about where he is. He turns his head and spots his large reflection staring back at him in the glass. He can't believe how his young, handsome self disappeared and turned into a chubby kid. The young man can't believe what he's seeing, so he tries to convince himself it's just a dream and hopes that if he falls back asleep, he'll wake up to find it all was real. The priest steps forward and announces that the young master has finally awakened, but a man suddenly enters the room and calls him a bastard. The man who brought shame to his family has finally opened his eyes. The priest tells his lord he just woke up and the punishment can wait. The man mutters in annoyance, but the priest reassures him that despite being knocked out cold, he isn't actually badly injured. It's a relief to see his mind settled and most of his wounds closed up again. But the lord roared that he wished he'd died instead of tormenting his bride, calling him a beast. At 19, he realizes it's finally time to grow up. Even his little brother has already started glowing with power, while the older brother is still stuck being fat and completely out of energy. Yurin repeats this, looking completely shocked. The Lord warns him that once he is well again, he must rush to her and beg for her forgiveness. Yurin repeats her words, and his father responds that it's his wife Ilya, adding that if she doesn't forgive him, he will truly be punished. He checks to make sure I get it, and I nod that I do. The Lord warns him that no matter what happens, he must stop bringing shame to his family. Yurin shakes with fear, unsure if this is really him, and decides he must be Wellington Rocks. The Lord was so shocked that someone would dare speak his name aloud. He shouts that he's a brat and smacks him for the nerve to call his dad by his name. The chubby kid takes a beating that lasts for several seconds. The priest tries to calm his lord, but his words fall on deaf ears. Yurin is so strange that it feels like it can't possibly be real. This has to be a dream. After a while, he wakes up and jolts upright in a startle. He keeps asking himself why he still hasn't found his way back to the real world. The woman steps up to him, asking if he has finally woken up. Yurin called for Aaron, and the woman answered, only to be left puzzled when he stopped talking. The protagonist wonders if he's trapped here because messing with Ilya landed him with a knockout. Aaron agrees, but wonders why he is suddenly acting so polite. Yurin nods and wonders if he was truly hit that hard. She confirmed that he tried to harass Miss Ilya, so she beat him up until he passed out. He screams in despair that he's hopelessly screwed, leaving the girl confused by a sudden outburst. In a twist of fate, he found himself inside the story he wrote, but not in the starring role. Instead, the villain who insults the hero and ends up dying miserably just screams that he can't possibly deserve such a terrible end. Aaron shouts for her young master, but he keeps panicking and calling it a webtoon, a strange word the woman doesn't know. Yurin was sure the body he had taken over was just a piece of garbage. With no talent, skill, or hard work, He lived only on his family's good name until his fiancée ran away with the hero. He sneaks up to get revenge, but ends up getting knocked out and dying in a dark alley like a fool. Yurin wonders how he'll survive in this strange fantasy world where he knows nothing about the fat boy's powers. Though he knows about the forgotten items the hero hasn't found yet, he decides to get ready fast by sitting up in bed, only to find his heavy body making it hard to stay balanced. Eren wonders if the young master is all right. Yurin insists he's fine, yet he spots something strange. She tells him he needs to rest. The hero frowned just now because he knew he couldn't see what was there. A system screen stood right beside Eren. It said the girl possessed a sword that moved faster than wind, a mind as sharp as glass, and an aura that could adapt to anything. The girl shouts for the young master one more time. Yurin denies it, claiming he lost his mind for just a moment but is fine now, and she should return to her work. Eren nods and turns to walk away, but the protagonist keeps watching her go. He stares at the fast sword, remembering how Eren used to be a hero far stronger than any knight, yet now he wonders what this strange affinity thing was, since it seems to be completely gone. He starts to wonder if that strange game is just a dating sim showing up, because he's played so many of them before. He is curious to find out exactly what kind of world they built. The main character pauses for a moment to think things over. The fact that Yurin was friendly was a surprise, but that wasn't the real issue. He stares at his own body in the mirror, holding his breath until the system screen flickers into view. He yells, "Yes," and checks his status screen, where he sees his new Eye of Creation power and the Four Heavens title from the Tang family. He believes he possesses special powers, including a rare talent known as the Four Heavens skill of the Tang family. It was the Wukia webtoon he loved because the heroine was so stunning. It's the Poison Clan with secret weapons, and while the world feels strange, he decides to wait because if he can master the Tang clan's Four Heavens martial arts, he'll have a real chance to survive. This deadly fighting style came from a famous group in the Four Heavens province of Wukia, masters of poisons and silent killers. He can't stop wondering why this modern thing is in a medieval fantasy world, but now he knows it's the key to unlocking his hidden powers. Wellington walked quietly to his room until Eren's voice called out, "My lord." He asks if his son has woken up, and the girl nods to confirm. Wellington asked what he looked like, and Eren said he didn't seem fully well yet. As he tried to stand, he stumbled and fell, looking terribly weak. Wellington notes that Father Alio said the wound wasn't deep, but his son seemed odd because he wouldn't have thrown a tantrum before. But now he strangely just took it all in. Even though his personality stays the same, he looks dazed now, and by tomorrow, he'll likely be furious and hunting for revenge against Ilya. Eren says that her young master will slowly feel better again. Wellington spins around with a frown, leaving the girl completely stunned. He admits his own father has given up on him, yet the girl insists he still owe her a chance at the life of a knight. He wonders just how tough it must be to serve under him, but Eren thinks otherwise because the young master seems strange today in a way that's hard to explain. Earlier, Eren had screamed, shouting for them to explain what they were talking about. He says he just wants to get some exercise and asks her to show him the way. Eren wonders if he should really start training right now, and Yurin nods, asking what's wrong. His special power lets him read people's stats, yet he still doesn't know how to unlock the secret fighting style of the Tang clan from Sichuan. Maybe he's too heavy to do much, so for now, he'll just keep moving until he figures out a better way. Yurin thinks this mansion is as huge as several stadiums, and he's already completely tired. But if he tries to work out in his room, his lazy self will just pull the covers back on and stay there. He really should skip his home workouts. Even the servants he meets stare at him with pure disgust. Given how much of a jerk Yurin used to be, he can't really blame them for the way they treated him. They keep walking, and Yurin asks if they're close, to which Eren says they're almost there, noting that this is the third training center, even though most knights stick to the first two. Yurin suddenly spots someone standing right in front of him. He realized the magic bond was so strong at 91 that it could easily end his life. Ray Alien, the man speaking to the young master, asked what had brought him to the training hall. Yurin recognized him at once, and the man laughed, saying it was an honor that the young master still remembered him. Yurin nods and stares at the sword with fear. Then he suddenly shouts for Eren, asking if something bad happened between them. Eren asks if he forgot how the Mares forced him to train years ago, when the furious young master Ray dubbed him an apprentice knight and slashed his face with a sword while laughing, an event that finally made the Mares give up on making him train. The Yurin screamed that there was no escape. Ray gives him a quick, sideways look, already convinced he's just wasted space. Yurin makes up his mind to run away. He asks if there is another training hall where he can practice alone. Eren claims this is the fourth hall, but it feels so distant and the gear is so faulty that it's likely just empty. Yurin replies that it's perfect and they should go there because if he's going to lose weight, he should do it properly. The bodyguard nods in agreement and gestures for him to follow. She gestures toward the fourth training hall while Yurin pants heavily from the walk. He looks down at the equipment on the table and thinks that the Tang clan from Sichuan is famous for throwing knives. So he decides to give a shot. Looking at the targets in front of him, Yurin aims at one of them and brings the dagger up to his face. He winds up and hurls it with every ounce of his strength. But the dagger just clatters to the ground, missing its mark. He grumbles to himself that he could have fixed it, only to look back and see Aaron standing right behind him. So he comes up with an excuse, claiming he only threw it as a joke. He decided to build up his stamina by running a few laps around the hall first. He'll train by himself so Aaron can do whatever she likes. Wellington couldn't believe his eyes as Yurin had rushed to the training grounds to start working hard, and he was left wondering just how long that strange energy would last. 3 weeks go by, and the Lord keeps training hard without stopping for the entire time. The boy looked so thin and different, just like everyone expected his son to be. Without all that extra weight, he's actually quite handsome. She wonders if he has really grown up. Back at the castle, he thought he'd lost enough weight to unlock the secret Tang clan technique from Sichuan, but it still wouldn't open. He'll try for a month, and if that fails, he'll just steal the protagonist's luck to make up for it. Just as the boy is hungry, Aaron shows up with dinner, and he thanks her. It was share-rain soup, a hearty, nutrient-packed meal that would help burn fat and build muscle. Yurin grumbles about the food, so Aaron asks if he's finally tired of eating it. He nods, admitting he hasn't eaten anything, but the girl asks the young master if he truly wants to lose weight or become a knight. Yurin replies that he wants to become a knight, but Aaron says that even the powerful Marquis eats cherry soup after training in this land, so the young master should stop complaining and just eat it. Yurin reluctantly obeys her orders, muttering to himself that life offers lessons while wondering about the strange old tradition, though he decides to keep eating the soup since it helped him shed some fat. He scoops a spoonful into his mouth, and Yurin notices the soup tastes a little different from the usual chain soup. A warning screen flashes before him showing he has taken poison, but right after, another message pops up saying he has unlocked the Sichuan Tang clan. The skill unlocked left him totally stunned. Suddenly, the Marquis hears a knock on his door and calls out for whoever is there to enter. His wife chimes in, saying she brought some tea. Ka, the second wife, leaned in to ask what he was staring at so hard. Wellington just said he was lost in thought, admiring how lovely the garden looked. Ka says she's handled everything herself with such care that her husband can't help but praise her amazing skills. But his wife suddenly grabs him from behind, asking when he will finally pick Colin to take over, just as he had said before. Since the decision is already made, let's just get it over with quickly. Wellington turns away from the hug and shouts to Ka that it'll take just a little longer. Ka asks why he hasn't named him last month like he said, and the Lord confirms it while noting she's likely heard the news too. It looks like Yurin has finally woken up to the truth that he is the eldest son of House Rocks. If he truly gives it his all, he could end up being the perfect choice to take his place. Hina agrees that it's true and admits she's heard many stories about it, and while she was worried, seeing him recovered brings a great sense of relief to her husband. Wellington finds it funny that after his fiancée beat him, he somehow woke up. But Ka wonders what he will do next about finding a successor. The Lord said, Yurin has only been training for 3 weeks, so let's watch him a little longer before judging. But he promises that if Yurin goes back to his old ways, he will instantly make Colin the new heir. Hina tells him to wrap up his work fast before she heads off to her room. Finally leaving the Duke's room, she clenched her teeth in a flash of anger. She shouts Yurin's name and tells him to just wait and see. He stepped back into the room and felt a huge rush of excitement at the new skill he had just unlocked. Then he reveals that the Tang family from Sichuan masters the art of poison, but to unlock their secret, one must willingly swallow it. But after pausing, he checks the soup stats again because he saw an icon and wants to know what it represents. Watching the text scroll down, I noticed it even listed a Hanyong herb known to cure paralysis. The boy looks thrilled, while Aaron is puzzled by the young master's refusal to eat. Yurin replies that he will eat, takes another spoonful, and as he chews, he wonders who put the poison in it since he is no one who would die from such a thing. Something had shifted the story's path, and now he realized there was one thing that still hadn't happened yet. He remembered his father standing beside Colin and wondered why he wasn't named the official heir yet. Was it because he finally started training? No matter what, he swallows the last bit of the poisoned food, and just as he does, a new screen suddenly pops up in front of him. A warning flashes that the signs of weak paralysis poison are finally showing up. The boy shouts that he's all done with his meal. It was so amazing it made him cry, leaving Aaron completely stunned. Yurin asks the bodyguard to leave him alone for a rest, and when she agrees to see him tomorrow, he wishes her a good night. As soon as she walks out, the boy spins to the mirror, declaring he's off to watch over the Tang family in Sichuan while summoning the creators at a show itself. The screen flashed his stats, revealing that his connection had slipped down to 97%. The Yurin claims it has a smart interface. If he looks only at the plus icon, he discovers that he has gained skills in poison, martial arts, and hidden weapons. He begins by deciding to test his poison skills. With only the weak paralysis skill unlocked and no internal technique to back it up, he stands powerless. The hero saw the deadly poisons everywhere and had to climb down as far as he dared. He realized the last poison was invisibility, so he had to unlock the earlier ones first because they worked like levels. To achieve that most fundamental power, weak paralysis, he had to master an internal technique. It all made sense because the Tang clan from Sichuan used their inner strength to keep their special potions fresh. Now he moved to test his martial arts skills. They had 3 paths to master: the deadly black poison arts, the sharp thunder needles, and the divine power of 10,000 poisons. Yurin made it clear that picking the Wukia fan was an easy choice. The black poison style is all about using deadly toxins to fight. The thunder needle style is all about keeping your secret gear hidden away until the perfect moment to strike. Even though the divine power of the 10,000 poisons takes time to grow, it lets him make his poisons and secret gadgets stronger. By picking that technique right away, the system blasted him with energy. Yurin called it unbelievable, but with the mantras now burned into his mind, he had to try moving his energy right now. Stripping off his shirt and sinking onto the bed, he pulled energy into his dantian, feeling a strange current course through his whole body. This had to be chi, so he guided it through his energy paths and tucked it away in his dantian to build his inner strength. The following morning, the young man finally ended his deep concentration. He claimed it was incredible, proving the martial arts stories right about training all night without sleep. This was truly real, and he felt no fatigue at all. Actually, he was bursting with energy inside. He could feel a strange energy humming all around him. He could hear exactly how many birds were outside without even peeking. He also felt a warm energy buzzing in his dantian. And now, if he turned the key inside his head without a mirror, the status window would spring open. It showed he was a 1-star master in his craft. The hero sensed that familiar presence waiting just outside the door. As Erin opened it and called for her young master to wake him, she found him untouched by sleep, meaning he must have been awake. Yurin just shrugged and said that's how things happened. She told him things weren't going well, and he needed to skip today's training to get some rest. The hero said no, telling me he was already heading that way. Feeling amazing and in top shape, he knew he had to get back to training. Erin nodded her agreement and set about making breakfast right away. As she walked out of the room, she began to wonder when the young master had started getting stronger. Outside of the training ground, Yurin walked up to the daggers resting on the table. He confirmed it was real, grabbed one to toss it away, but then spotted something strange. Suddenly, a glowing crosshair appeared right in his vision, just like the one in video games. So he aimed right at the target, darting his body around as Erin watched with worry. Yurin hurled the weapon, which struck the target and burst into a purple glow. He declared that the deed was done and his guard was impressed, while the protagonist also ripped open the hidden weapons from the system. Erin shouted at the young master, asking what he had just done. The protagonist shrugged and said he had no idea, thinking the training from last month was finally starting to make a difference. She replied, "No way," and her shocked reaction made the Yurin shine strangely, leaving him wondering if he should try again. He gripped the dagger one last time. He felt a rush of power building up inside him, and he knew that would make his next throw faster and stronger. He threw the dagger again, pinning it right in the middle of the target. Even the target shattered, leaving Erin speechless while the protagonist just kept smiling. He figured that aiming with a crosshair was just like using a cheat code. Believe it or not, a game called Battle Attack once existed, and he even won the tournament at the local land center. Erin stared wide-eyed, completely baffled by what he was seeing. The protagonist asked if she noticed anything different about him, and the guard just repeated his question. She said yes, but even though he had lost weight since yesterday, she couldn't tell, so he asked her about it. Erin nodded in agreement. Though he had trained hard and drank Shurain soup every day, today his change was even more striking. She stared at him, puzzled, wondering if the power humming inside his body was real or just a trick of her mind. This meant he was the only one in this world who could use internal energy and hide it from everyone, giving him a power like no other. He chuckled to himself, wondering if he should keep going. He struck the target 2 times in a row without even trying. He promised he'd give a fresh try this time. He drove his second dagger deep into the handle of the first one that was already stuck in the target. He declared it perfect, leaving his guard amazed once again. She asked if she was allowed to give it a try. She held the dagger steady and aimed with a calm focus. She threw everything she had, but the thing flew wide and just bumped the wall. The urine seemed to say she couldn't do it, and the girl grew frustrated. Then the young man's eyes caught something unexpected. A status window popped up right above her head. She had unlocked the direct cut skill and realized she could use it with any weapon. He promised to give it a try, while Aaron grew frustrated because it kept failing. He paused, wondering if he should give this a try. He asked Aaron to take a quick step back. She wondered what was in his hand, because he was gripping a broken wooden sword. He swung it all the way up as high as it could go. He felt a surge of raw power flowing from his stomach up into his arms. He threw the object and landed the direct hit. The cracked sword dug deep into the center of the target, smashing everything nearby to pieces. Aaron stared at it in amazement and couldn't believe what he was seeing. She asked Aaron what the young master's power really was, and he guessed it might just be something he was practicing. The bodyguard shook his head and said it couldn't happen. The protagonist admitted she had told his father about his training, but asked her to keep his next favor secret. Though Aaron was skeptical, he explained he was testing many things and would reveal the truth later, so she needed to wait. She just took it and let the day slip away. The household staff waved goodbye, wishing them a good day and promising to see them again tomorrow. The same thing happened to a man named Peru, who just took it in his stride. He strolled by with a relaxed stride before turning around to head the other way. Aaron stared at this with a cold face. He chose to let the creator's eyes rest upon him. This was Peru, a place with no connection to us, where the air hummed with deadly poison and creatures darted with impossible speed. Aaron figured out that his power let him slip poison into food, which confirmed it was definitely him. So, he was finally ready to run the real test. The arrow in his hand was about to fly straight at the man. He whispered a spell to create a poison, and his energy flowed into his 2 index fingers. Peru suddenly felt something odd happening inside his body. He spun around, screaming in pain and begging his body to move, but refused to obey. The protagonist walked up to the unconscious man and said the test had worked. He knew the whole thing would take an hour. He would lift the man onto his back first. While the rest of the world slept, Peru was suffering. The main character grabbed his shoulder and shook him hard, shouting, "Snap out of it." He wondered if he had finally snapped back to reality and remembered who he was. Peru shook with fear as the protagonist warned that only a correct answer would save his life, then demanded to know if he was the one who had poisoned his soup. He had a few questions to ask the man. Peru should blink once to say yes, or twice to say no. He asked if I got it, and Peru blinked just once. He asked once more, wondering if he himself had put poison in the soup. Peru stared at him with cold eyes and simply blinked once. Aaron asked if the poison he gave was the Hanyang herb. Peru blinked again, stunned by what he saw. Shifting to the next question, the protagonist revealed that Martianka was the one who ordered him to poison the victim. Aaron was shocked to learn that Peru had rejected the answer. He warned that traitor not to lie, saying if he did, he'd get a cut in his neck. Now he would ask again, hoping to find out if Ms. Ka gave the order. Peru grew even more scared and said no once again. He figured he wasn't lying and needed to find out who was behind it, so he decided to play a part for a little while. He commanded him to devour that and wash it down. They called that very first bite the initial poison. The man swallowed hard as the protagonist declared that he had exactly 1 month left to live. If he didn't drink the antidote by the end of the month, every organ in his body would turn to mush. For now, it was best to obey his commands. He checked if the message made sense, and Peru nodded his head in agreement. As the hero touched his head to fight off the paralyzing poison, the man suddenly broke free from his restraints. The protagonist whispered that he could move and talk again, and Peru instantly agreed. Aaron said he would ask one more time to find out who ordered him to poison himself. Peru shook with fear, believing that terrifying knight Carrick had come to life. He told the young master he must die like a soldier before the year ends. The protagonist believed he became commander of Ka's older brother just because he knew the right people, but that didn't really matter. He slid a piece of paper across to his fresh new helper. Peru wondered if everything wasn't poison, while the protagonist marveled that few people knew as much as this guy. Then he said that someone like him could buy them on the black market and should take Carrick's money. He has to get every single poison he owns, including the one he already has, in his hands by tomorrow night. Peru asked why he needed all those deadly poisons. Aaron snapped back, asking when he'd given him the green light to start asking questions. The subordinate nodded in quiet terror, understanding exactly what was happening. Aaron spun around and said they should go. And from now on, Every pot of healing soup he drinks must be packed with plenty of Hanyang grass. Peru stood there totally stunned and asked, "How could this possibly be true?" Back in his room, the protagonist whispered that this was incredible, realizing that martial arts were truly strong beyond any measure. And even the man who first brewed the deadly potion from those mixed leaves was tricked into trusting it himself. But for now, he has to learn the Tang's four heavens martial arts fast. If the world strays from his written path, terrible things will happen everywhere. After the day was done, Peru summoned the young master to tell him that he had gathered all the poison herbs he could find. He left some ginseng and leaves on the table. The protagonist pointed out that one was Hanyang grass, the reverse green creeper, while the other was a croink leaf. Peru looked shocked and asked how he could know, since they were all rare and dangerous herbs. Yurin replied that the situation was simple and could be seen right in the status window, but he quickly changed the topic to wonder why they needed other poisons if the Hanyang grass was already enough to end his life. Peru explained that Hanyang grass grows slowly but builds strong resistance, and when mixed with green creeper, its power only gets stronger. The hero explained that mixing the poisons made them far stronger and much harder to spot. He wanted to know where he learned about poisons, and Peru told him that when he was just 8 years old, he was sold to the living Tyne family and taught by a poison master. About 20 children were there, yet they all perished while he was the sole survivor. Yurin realized that without a knack for handling poison, the kids wouldn't survive, and since the family didn't thank him for finding such a useful helper, he felt a bit unappreciated. He told me he'd done his best, and that was it for the day. Peru thanked the young master and wished him a peaceful night. With the room now empty, the main character knew it was time to begin. He picked up the poisonous herbs and was about to eat them all. He lifted the object to his lips. The hero felt like he'd throw up just from the taste. His system warned him that he had swallowed every poison and faced great danger. So he had to meditate and reach level 2. The hero closed his eyes, took a long breath, and threw all his focus into the task. After another day passed, Erin knocked on the door to tell her it was morning. She was surprised to see the young master was already awake. As he sat on the bed in a deep meditation, she wondered what strange thing had changed his body. The hero climbed to 2 stars, grabbed the fierce draconic martial art, and collected 3 extra poisons. Then he opened his eyes, smiling. She just couldn't stop wondering what on earth had gone wrong with the young master. She caught a weird smell and started complaining about it. The hero just went along with it and rubbed his head in confusion. He realized it was true that when a martial artist's inner power grows strong, their body naturally kicks out all the bad stuff. Then he walked over, noting that it smelled a bit, and suggested opening the window. Ayn shook her head and told him to head straight for the bath. Later that day, she walked the young master forward. Yurin burst out laughing as he watched him master the Tang family's deadly dragon step moves, a secret assassination art that felt like it had just jumped off the page of a novel. He decided to copy the moves for now. Then Erin shouted for the young master and spun around. She wondered why he was stumbling around like a drunkard and what was hurting his body. He told her he was okay and not to be worried. He laughed while bouncing from one side to the other. Erin wondered if he was truly all right. Today, he headed to Training Hall 1, where a crowd of knights was already gathered. The hero nodded, certain he'd be okay. He was just curious about how the other knights trained, and she didn't need to worry about him. Erin said they were just about to arrive. The knights practiced their moves, swinging their swords up and down and side to side until their muscles burned. One knight was so surprised he had to ask who that person was. That old lady was the servant to the eldest young master, but everyone wanted to find out who the handsome young man hiding behind her was. Everyone was shocked to realize the young master had lost so much weight from his training. They marveled at the spell he cast to turn him from a worthless pig into something extraordinary. The hero didn't care if those guys were whispering secrets to each other. His inner power let him hear every single sound. Erin pointed to a guy in the hall who was busy training. He looked like a young apprentice knight, yet his perfect stance showed he was almost ready to become a novice. These are the basic moves of rock swordsmanship, so the young master should watch closely while Yurin kept an eye on that guy. Clyde, the story's brave new ally who had never shared his past before being found, finally got to speak of it now. Clyde swung his sword up and down, and Yurin thought it was strange to see him in such a place. A real chance will come along soon. Today, the knights who didn't get along with him would become the ones he tested on. First, he tested the poison on the chain by picking a purple-haired knight as his target. He chose to trigger the chain poison, and the knight felt a sharp, sudden pain. He dropped to his knees just as a crowd of people rushed toward him. They asked if he felt sick or needed to use the bathroom, but the man shook his head and said no. He tried to stop himself from drooling while he pushed through the pain. He crashed to the ground as the knights yelled that they had to summon the priest. Suddenly, The man's pain vanished, and his captain stopped to ask what had gone wrong. The pain vanished, and the captain couldn't believe the fool was joking, so he ordered him to get to the bathroom. The knight tried to argue that he was truly hurting. Yurin said that was good. This time, he released a scary, swirling fog that made people nearby feel terrified and confused. All of a sudden, a knight heard a loud boom. The man standing before him had twisted into a scary demon. Eren saw the man on the floor screaming at the demon to leave. She wondered why they had become this way. In his nightmare, a man fought for his life against a demon and a skeleton. He cursed the moment it disappeared. They suddenly wondered just what it was. Yurin knew he couldn't let them die, so he stopped testing that day because what he saw was truly amazing. Then he declared it was time to head back for the day. Eren asked if he was leaving so soon, and the protagonist replied that it was too noisy and he'd head to Hall 4, just like planned. While they were on their journey, they happened to cross paths with a girl. She said a guest had arrived for the young master, and Miss Ilia Marcus had come see him. The woman by the window whispered that this time she was finally going to crack Yurin's stubborn resistance. She looked back at the hero, who had just spoken her name. The girl suddenly blushed, and Yurin asked if she had arrived. Ilia didn't know the man and asked who he was. Before, when the maid announced that Ilia Marcus was here, I thought my fiery fiancé had finally come to visit. This was likely when she asked to end things, but Yurin kept refusing and calling her ridiculous. The young man shook his head and said there was no fixing what had happened. Back in the room, the protagonist admitted it was him, pointing to the Yurin. She looked surprised as he tells her it's been a long time. Ilia says she heard a rumor that he'd lost weight from training, but she thought it was obviously fake. After only 2 months, he had changed so much that it was hard to believe. The protagonist claimed his success came from hard work, leaving Ilia puzzled, but after getting beaten by her and spending a long time thinking, he finally decided to change his life. Ilia asks if he wants to fight for revenge, but the young man kneels in gratitude and refuses. Having finally regained his sense and deeply regretting everything, he promised that if she chooses to end their engagement because of this, he will accept it without a fight. She only asked who he was because she didn't know him. Yurin says he used to be the Rock's family's discarded son. He says he's sorry again for everything he did. Ilia stares in shock at what he's just seen. The protagonist thought honestly that it wasn't his fault, but rather the original owner of this body's mistake. He asked for forgiveness for a very specific reason. Ilia wasn't just a simple heroine. She was a sword queen whose blade grew sharper with every swing. Later, she swoops in to save the fallen hero and even chops down the final villain, all because of her special power. That's why, even if they broke their promise, it would be smart to fix things and turn her into his partner. Ilia grabs him and insists he stand up, making sure he means what he's saying about this. Yurin agrees and promises, yet the girl refuses and demands he swear, radiating a terrifying aura. The main character feels crushed by a pressure he's felt before in a dream. Ilia tells him he can't go back to his old life, and if he breaks their deal, she will kill him herself. The protagonist feels confused because Ilia said those exact words, yet he can't breathe and mutters about the deadly poison hidden inside the electric divine art. Ilia looks shocked when the protagonist finally stands up. She wonders how he stood up to her magic, but he just smiles sweetly and promises to honor it, leaving Ilia blushing as she turns away to keep watch over him. If he slips up one more time, they'll call off their engagement, and the protagonist is shocked they haven't split up yet. At the Lord's castle, Wellington asks the girl if she found Yurin, and she says yes. He wonders if she has finally decided. Ilia nods again, saying the engagement was going to happen anyway. Wellington asks why. Ilia told me her dad always claimed people never changed, yet a rumor whispered that he had, leaving her wondering if he'd turned back into the weak, gentle Yurin she remembered from her childhood. So he changed into a new person, and that's why she decided to trust him again. Wellington asked if that was all the girl had to say, and she confirmed it with a nod. But if he turns back into trash, she will smash him to death with her own hands. Wellington says that's what a great warrior does, so she should take care of Yurin. Ilia packs up to leave, but the Lord kindly asks her to stay a few more days. She says telling her dad she was ending the engagement made things feel really awkward. Wellington wonders if she'll visit Yurin before she goes, but Ilia shakes her head, saying no since Yurin is training and she doesn't want to bother him. As the day fades, Yurin waits for his father to explain why he summoned him. He shakes his head in denial, puzzled by the question since he doesn't know who he is talking to, and the protagonist is just as confused. Wellington chuckles, claiming it was a joke and that he put in a lot of effort, but he asks if the summons is about the beginning of his night training, while Yurin wonders if that is indeed the reason. Wellington claims he is correct and has sharpened his mind too. Now he learns the Rock's family's sword style, and the protagonist shouts from the stage that he has news to share. His father questions him about learning the art of throwing weapons, since he wants to master that skill rather than sword fighting. The protagonist nods in agreement, but Wellington snaps that such a dishonorable trick is only for bandits and will never be allowed here. Using that trick meant he'd never even come close to earning his knight's armor or taking down a weak monster like a Barak. Yurin suggests they make a bet on whether he can hunt a Barak with a dagger, noting that if he is truly confident, a wager should be placed. His father let out a sigh, saying he was being stubborn for no good reason. To break a Barak's tough scales, a warrior must strike with a blade that glows with powerful energy. Unless he had thrown 1,000 times before, he'd never be able to pierce them. The hero decides that to guarantee his win, he must place a bet with him. His father calls him reckless and vows to crush his stubbornness. So Yurin agrees that if he can defeat a burrow with his dagger, he gets to train on his own, but if he fails, he will do whatever his father says. As the day wears on, the protagonist is relieved that Eren didn't report for training, knowing the real test is just tomorrow. He wonders how many attempts it will take to break through a Barak's thick scales. Just in case, he plans to eat some poisonous herbs tonight to boost his special body to a higher level. He spins around at the sound, and Eren shouts out to the young master, telling her she has a message from the Marquis to deliver. By tomorrow noon, that very spot will become our very first training center. He asks if she even knows about the bet, but Eren replies that the whole state already does. Because of that, the entire spot was filled with laughter right now. They all chatted happily about how the young master would either wet his pants in terror or run away when he spotted a burrow. After all, the young master is still the biggest trouble we've got. Yurin says everyone will be watching tomorrow. Eren confirms it, and the Marquis and training center will be packed tight. The young boy whispers that fame has a cost, yet he still asks Eren what he thinks will happen next. The girl said it will probably be the young master's day to shine. With his divine poison body technique reaching 3 stars, the moment for the test has finally arrived. While the crowd screams either for or against the young master, they throw their parties. The Yurin says it's truly embarrassing. The dad kicks off the event by asking if his son is ready. The young man nods as yes, but warns that so many people are watching. Wellington claims he only told his mage, yet somehow the whole world heard the news anyway. He should try not to let it make him feel ashamed. The mage declares the start of his spell and pulls forth a creature right beside him. Yurin believes he's about to witness magic with his own eyes. Suddenly, a flash of lightning hits the battlefield and reveals a creature rising from the smoke. The protagonist is convinced that something even more amazing is waiting to be discovered. He stood there, staring at the terrifying monster he had written himself. Burrow is a sea monster standing about 5 feet tall. The crowd whispered that the sight was too frightening to bear, but the hero stood amazed, finally seeing it exactly as he had dreamed. While he ate purple fish sashimi, the idea of a monster called Burrow popped into his head, filling him with new thoughts about monsters. If it didn't have those legs and arms, it would be kind of cute. The monster lunges straight at the young man. Yurin barely notices the attack, dodges it, gets behind a creature, impresses the people, and the Lord declares it's not over yet as a confused Burrow turns around. He just moved forward without thinking about it at all. But it wasn't nearly as quick as he had hoped. First, he tests the hardness of its scales by pulling out a dagger. Then he spots something strange. One of the creatures had a glowing mark on it, like a target pointing to its weak spot. Taking a deep breath, the protagonist swings his arm and hurls the dagger. As the key melts into the blade, it strikes the creature's weak spot. Suddenly, Burrow screams in agony, collapses to the ground, and goes still, ruining the show for everyone watching. The hero grumbled, convinced he'd swallowed it all in one big gulp. The crowd is blown away, and even Wellington stands stunned. The crowd cheers loudly, declaring that the young master has truly done it. When the young master knocked out the Barak, everyone thought he was pretty awesome. The crowd cheers for him until someone yells that Yurin is a brat and wonders how he did it. The protagonist took his time lining up his shot, and when he released it, he struck the target just where he meant to. His dad is upset that he won't take it. A Borat couldn't die from a simple dagger, so this was impossible. The protagonist wondered if the legendary Marcus rocks would ever break his promise. His mage, named Marcus, whispered that the young master had cleverly hidden a bare patch of skin right beneath the Boric's arm. Wellington grumbles that it was just luck, but the protagonist insists that a bet is still a bet. His dad wants to go around one more time. He will add another promise instead. If he wins, he gets one wish no matter what, but if he loses, he must return to train his sword skills as promised, which makes him thrilled to face a knight opponent instead of a burrow this time. He asks if he's ready to take on the challenge right now. The protagonist said yes, and it didn't really matter to him. He realized that instead of a problem, this was actually his opportunity. He was ready to face Commander Cox of the Knights. He wonders if he should break the guy's arrogance, but since he still wants Peru's poison, He decides to let him go for now, so Wellington agrees to send an apprentice instead of a fully trained knight to keep things fair. The main character sits quietly, turning the thought over in his mind. He wonders if he can pick his own knight, so he chooses Clyde to be his opponent. The man steps forward with his sword resting on his back as he heads toward the arena. He says the Marquis called him, and Wellington sees he's sure he's about to give Clyde a job. The apprentice agrees, promising to obey whatever his lord commands. He tells him to fix that kid up, and Clyde turns around. The young master simply nods, leaving the swordsmanship apprentice in a total state of confusion. Wellington asks what's wrong and says that if he weren't so confident, he could do it. Clyde shakes his head and agrees to follow the orders without arguing. He tells him not to worry. He'll launch 3 daggers, and only if Clyde manages to block all 3 should he count a win. Wellington glares at the brat's arrogance and declares that Clyde must teach him a real lesson this time. Clyde raises his sword as the protagonist walks around the arena. The knights warn that if he loses, he won't get to eat dinner and will have to run 100 laps around the training field instead. Someone in the crowd with a woman's voice told the young master he could do it. He believed whoever it was had been cheering him on, and Clyde shouted at the young master. He declares he is ready, and Yurin turns around. He readies his first dagger, planning to begin by switching off the lights. But he noticed something odd when compared to the fight with Borak, because his opponent left so many holes open. If he strikes one of them, he could end their life. He won't let that happen, so he throws his first dagger. He was ready to dive right into it. Clyde calls it a good one and swings his sword to defend. It pushes him back about 4 steps. The crowd stood in awe, guessing if that loud boom was really a cannon blast. Wellington asks him to stay put just as he spots the dagger dropping to the floor. He lifts the dagger, marveling at how such a simple weapon could hold so much power. Clyde shakes with terror as his sword goes right through. The protagonist asks if he's ready now that he can see what happens if he lets his guard down. He told him to get ready because this time he was going to throw with all he had. He radiates such intense pressure that the aspiring knight begins to tremble. The protagonist refuses to let go, convinced he's still the hero of his own story and that he won't lose this way. Yurin knows it's time, so he readies his dagger for a direct throw. Another deafening boom roars across the darkening sky. Clyde swings his long sword to strike back, but a deafening crash erupts and fills the whole arena. As the smoke clears and people stare in shock, the Marquis can't believe the result because Clyde has fallen to his knees. Now he shakes with fear, his sword snapped in half. He just lets it go, leaving Marcus Wellington speechless. He shouts to Yurin, asking to speak alone with just the 2 of them. The hero shouts that the game isn't finished. Only 1 dagger remained, and the mayor's gaze questioned it. He says that's enough, but Yurin decides to ask him right out. He shouts at Clyde to lift his head up. He shouts to his young master. The protagonist wondered if he'd in the fight right now, but he knew that anyone who wanted to be a knight couldn't accept such shame because a true knight swings his sword until the battle has a clear end, and that was just the way of a knight. Then he yells that he'll ask Clyde one last time if he's about to throw in the towel like this. The knight whispers softly to summon the young master, but then he commands them to bring him a fresh sword. He springs to his feet, radiating a fierce energy as he declares he will not back down like this. The knight stood frozen in shock as Maris wondered how a rookie could unlock his aura in such a way. Yurin figured that, just as he expected at this opening moment, Clyde's berserker skill had finally shown itself. Now, he gets to try out some of the most powerful tricks yet. The rivals lock eyes and hold their ground for a few seconds. Clyde shouts at the young master, telling him to toss the dagger. Wellington fights back the thought that things are hopeless. It took such a powerful aura to appear, a gift only a top-tier knight could possess. He ponders what the Yurin might do, but the protagonist just says it's good. He grabs his final dagger and pours every bit of his strength into the blow. He tosses it clumsily at the man. Clyde wonders what that was and why it felt so slow this time. He screams that Yurin is just messing with him. He swings his sword to hack the dagger down, but the blade slips sideways, dodging his attack. Wellington sees what's going on, even though he is confused. The dagger sinks deep into Clyde's shoulder. The pain feels like it's drilling right into his bones, making the knight hurt even more. He hits the floor with a cry of pain. The crowd murmured, wondering what that was and calling it too slow. People say Clyde needs to stop bragging and ask if he's holding back just because he's the young master. The hero refuses to give in, feeling a surge of inner power that sends waves of searing pain through him. His dad yells out to Yurin, saying they'll talk later. Today, he finally won the bet. The hero flashes a bright smile. Clyde winces from the sharp pain in his shoulder, but the protagonist gently touches him, tells him to hold on, and then absorbs his energy to help. Clyde feels the sharp pain slowly turning away. He thanked the young master, and Urine just waved it off, saying it was no big deal. The knight bowed his head and begged for pardon. He realized the dagger wasn't flying slow because the young master was underestimating him, but because it was a perfect move. It was such a powerful skill that no master could learn in so little time, so he must have been hiding his true strength. He wonders if a secret group is hunting the mayor's family, and why he held back his power until now. He said it made sense that only the young master remained, calling it a noble sacrifice, while Urine thought the guy always liked conspiracy theories and Clyde praised the young master's attitude. He told me that when Urine goes up against the secret group, I should just ask if he needs me. The protagonist couldn't figure out when everyone started liking him so much. He nods and agrees to meet up again, believing Clyde is a kind but simple-minded berserker. Clyde urges him to trust in his ability to spread the word that the young master is no longer seen as trash, promising that staying close to him now will one day help him take on missions all on his own. Aaron tells the young master how hard he worked, and Urine thanks her while marveling that his final technique was something she has never seen before. The main character mentioned it was a fresh skill she'd just learned and asked for her thoughts. Aaron admits that seeing it made her doubt her chances at first, but now she's certain she can stop it because she knows what to expect. The protagonist was sure in her heart that she wasn't just making a show of it. She had a rare and mighty gift, a mirror made of a quiet mind. Urine replies that she has been training as a knight since childhood and says that if she hadn't become his guard, she would have been one all along. He asks her if she's happy with how things are now. Aaron is totally lost when that unexpected question pops up. As the daylight fades, Wellington settles down in his office to rest. The protagonist walked into the room and asked why the Mares had called him there. His father called him an idiot and said that when they were alone, he should call him Dad, which really killed the mood. Urine just accepted everything, but his father, still puzzled, asked what that strange technique from yesterday actually was, even though he had searched through books and never seen a move quite like it. A month had passed since he began training, and even with his genius, he couldn't learn a technique all by himself. He asked what had gone wrong and made him speak the truth. The protagonist was sure he couldn't tell him the truth, but he had a great story ready to go. He told me he found a book, and his dad immediately asked about it. The young man nodded, and as he browsed the state library in search of manuals, he ran right into a book. He wondered who had left the book on the floor, but as he leaned back against the wall, a book suddenly tumbled down from the dusty shelf above. The book had no title, only a strange symbol carved into its cover. The hero didn't care much about it, so he simply opened it. A flash of light erupted from inside, etching a message straight into his mind before the book disappeared entirely. Wellington's words turned that book into a magical tome. The hero gave a quick nod. He realized that his rule about a magic book was his own invention, believing it held the power to let a great mage pass on their skills. The Lord explained that magic books work that way, and even though he didn't know how they appeared, they might have come from his ancestors. He was incredibly lucky to find that book. The hero chose to call the surprise money he found a lucky windfall. His father stood up and declared that since a promise is a promise, he would no longer make him practice swordsmanship. As part of his promise, he needs to share what he truly wants. The hero spoke to his dad in a quiet voice. He told his father he wanted the heir's spot, which left Wellington stunned, but since his father couldn't promise it was possible, he was in trouble. Wellington paused for a moment, then said that because he held such power, he could do it. The hero couldn't shake the feeling that something was making him feel out of place. If he became the successor, there would be trouble, as many would oppose the Marquis's family, especially the young lady who would stir up a huge commotion. This time, he decided to give in. His dad asked questions, but he quickly agreed and gave thanks. Urine assumed he wasn't wanted for the successor role anyway. If he accepted the inheritance, he'd be trapped with the Marquis every day, forced to learn the hard ways of ruling. Instead, he chose to spend his time mastering the four heavens of the Tang clan and traveling the world to find new chances. Wellington asked him what else he wanted, and he said he wished to lead his very own group of knights. He wanted Aaron, his butler, and Clyde, the other knight he had been playing with earlier. His dad said it wasn't as hard as being the heir, and since Aaron was such a rare talent, wasting him just as a butler would be a huge mistake. He did exactly what he wanted, and Urine just thanked him. The Lord asked about his butler, since only a few were left right then. Urine said Peru was working in the kitchen and wanted to be his butler, but he asked the Marquis to take the blame for giving him this chance. Wellington wondered what was happening, so Urine said he'd tell him later. His dad simply sighed and said yes. The protagonist felt his dad trusted him enough to ask no questions at all. He stopped thinking about how he had become so popular, wondering if it was all just because people loved his son. Standing outside, The hero declared to the two of them that they were now part of his special group of brave warriors. For now, they must train hard and welcome their new butler, Peru, who only asked them to take care of him. Aaron stood silent and watched the scene unfold before him. She remembered that the young master had a question for her yesterday. She couldn't understand why he'd swap a guy named Peru out for her to work as the butler. The hero rubbed his head and said he was a spy from Commander Karox of the White Eagle and Miss Koss sent to kill him. Aaron explained that even if it were true, she couldn't trust him acting as a butler right next to her. The protagonist answered that now he would only follow orders. Clyde leaned in to tell the young master he had a question. Aaron nodded that it was a good idea and gave him the green light to move forward. The aspirant explained that even with just the two of them, they were still a group of knights that needed a leader, and originally, that leader was simply the one who was better at fighting. Even though Aaron looked small and weak, she agreed he should lead because he was the one they needed. The hero nodded and said he was right. Since the strongest knight must lead, these two will now fight a duel to decide who takes the top spot. Before even a few seconds ticked by, Clyde gave up while Aaron pressed a sword against his neck. She told him that his fighting moves were too easy and needed serious work, so she urged him not to quit on his training. Clyde gave a nod and promised to remember what she told him. The protagonist just nodded and declared that the leader of the Night Order was chosen. It was Aaron who clapped along with Peru. Peru promised to cook dinner first, and that's how the day went by. The young man stepped back until he felt safe, yet his new power still hummed in the air, so he decided to try out his fresh technique right then. He didn't use his voice, but tapped into his own inner power to send sound waves straight into the minds of his targets, a trick common in Wookiee tales. So in his mind, he shouted out to Peru. He called out to the young master and turned around, only to find he was gone. He shouted his name over and over until his butler was left so confused and terrified he didn't know what to do. Aaron asked why he looked so surprised, while Peru grumbled that he was going crazy. He wondered if it was some kind of black magic, but the protagonist explained that it was actually just a way to talk to each other. Peru said that just as he expected, he wasn't just poisoned. He'd heard black mages can use both, so the young master must be just that kind. The protagonist was so confused, he just let him think whatever he wanted. He asked Peru if the poison he ordered last time was ready, and Peru said yes. A deadly poison, distilled from the venom of 100 snakes, sat ready to control their minds. The main character told him to pack plenty of poison into his celebration soup. Peru shook with fear, but agreed, and the next morning, the hero woke up from his meditation. He sighed again, convinced he was still stuck at the 3-star level with his inner energy not growing like he wanted. He didn't know how much time he had left until the world crisis, so he had no choice but to leave the Marquise's estate for now. He walked into his father's room and told him that he was ready to go. Wellington asked about it, because he hadn't been out for a while, so he must be thinking of some city in the Marquise. The hero nodded and said yes. Then his dad asked just how many days he'd be away. Ern knew he was heading far away, but since he didn't want to tell anyone, he just said he was thinking about a week. His dad said he'd earned the right to choose his own escort after all that hard training. The protagonist replied that he didn't need one, leaving the Lord confused, and then told his eldest son, Marco Rox's heir, to remember his important position. He told her he was just heading to the next town over, so having someone follow him seemed odd. Wellington yelled that he still didn't understand how tough the world was, and even though he felt strong, he was scared he might get poisoned. The hero figured the poison would do nothing to him, but he realized it would be a hard sell to convince that stubborn man otherwise. He promised to do what he was told, and when his father asked when he'd be leaving, he said it would take about 2 days, so Wellington decided to get the escort ready. Sitting in his room, Aaron decided that hiring an escort was pointless because he planned to run away tomorrow. As the sun set, the main character summoned Peru to his room and told him he was heading on a trip but had no cash, so he asked Peru to bring some with him. He had to use the cash from Crocs to buy those pricey potions. When questioned if he wasn't planning to hand it over, Peru laughed it off, calling it an honor and insisting he'd bring it along anyway. The protagonist asked if he had anything else, since the last time he'd seen him with poisonous herbs, he was carrying a special subspace pouch. It was a staple in fantasy tales, a simple thing capable of carrying a full ton. Peru promised to hand it over to the young master, even though he really didn't want to. Aaron accepted and thanked him because he wouldn't need a backpack anymore. Anyway, he told him to switch to the fake medicine he was holding out. He claimed that the 1-month potion was the only thing that could clear his poison. The main character told Peru that since he was doing such a good job, he could count on him for the future, and if he kept up the excellent work, he would soon get the full cure, which made Peru incredibly excited. The next morning, just as the sun was rising, Aaron whispered that he'd left a package behind, so he had to slip away quietly. He strolls through the huge house like he owns every single room. The young man figured, just as he expected, that nobody was there. The gardener spots the young master and greets him, noting that he had risen from his bed at the break of dawn. The protagonist accepts the green gardener's power and activates his creator's eye, only to be shocked by what it reveals. As the day stretches on, the protagonist realizes it's been his first full day out since fleeing the Marquis's castle. He spots something strange, a tower glowing with magic. The mage at the desk spots the young man and asks how she can help. Yurin says he wants to step through the portal. The mage asked if he'd ever used it before, and the hero shook his head, saying never. The young receptionist tells him about their mileage program, and the protagonist thinks it feels just like flying on a plane. The mage inquired where he was headed. EP to show he's heading to the evil castle. The receptionist nods, admitting the distance is long, but saying he gets it. It costs 50 gold, and once the money changes hands, he has to sign the passport. The protagonist thought to himself that the price was high, just as he'd guessed, but he was relieved to know he had plenty of cash to spare. For now, he'll go by the nickname Paolon, the same name he used when playing games. The mage gestures for the gentleman to step close and follow him. He is told to walk into the room and know that a knock means he has finally arrived. As the hero steps inside, he pauses to think, realizing just how beautiful everything is arranged. Then, a flash of lightning smacks right onto the castle's very top. Though the man's urine seemed confused, another man told him he had arrived and could now leave, welcoming him to ASU Castle. Yurin wonders how he ended up there without feeling a thing. The mage proudly says that the portal is a comfy ride, which is something mages take great pride in. Yurin seemed to echo his doubt, as if wondering if he had slipped something like this comfort into his story. The mage invites the traveler to return for more help and wishes them safe travels. The doors swung open, revealing a brand new place right before the protagonist's eyes. Oh, castle. Maybe because it was far east and outside the Marquis's lands, the buildings looked completely different. Plus, there were tons of people nearby. First, he tracks down a blacksmith ally by asking a local for clues. He walks toward a tiny house tucked away in an alley. The Yurin shows he's been looking for quite a while, but still hasn't found the unicorn blacksmith. The sky had already begun to turn dark. He had to check this final spot before he left. The sword rested on the anvil while the blacksmith hammered it into shape. The protagonist calls out to see if anyone is home. The blacksmith spots the new arrival. The hero confirms his identity and asks if he knows the unicorn blacksmith among the others. The man shakes his head and says he knows no blacksmith by that name around here. Yurin wondered if he had stumbled into the wrong spot, but the blacksmith laughed and said that was actually the name he was going to give his shop anyway. Yurin uses the creator's own eyes to watch him. He realizes his name is Gynox and that he carries the power to forge demonic weapons. The hero is sure he's finally found the perfect spot. He asked if he could check out the weapons he's trying to sell. The blacksmith points the way and says, "Go this path to browse." Yurin runs his hands over every weapon and piece of armor hanging on the wall. He asks about business, but the blacksmith is confused, admitting that since his shop is at the end of the hall and his skills are just okay, most people only look and leave, and he isn't sure how much longer he can keep going. The protagonist thinks to himself that this is pretty cool because the gear here is seriously serious business. He spots the wind spirit rapier that makes him faster and the fire spirit long sword that makes him stronger, then wonders if he forged them himself. Jiren said yes, but as soon as he finished them, they turned out to be total failures. Once the swords were forged, they turned so incredibly heavy that no strong man could lift them, so nobody ever went to buy them. Yurin believes the blades are stained because unworthy hands have touched them. If someone special ever held the sword, its power would wake up, but he still doesn't know how to make it do what it really wants. So, he declares that he'll grab both swords. Gyronox calls them failed pieces, but the hero insists they're perfect for Aaron and Clyde, noting that this wasn't the treasure he wanted and then asking if they have any very rusty weapons. The man doesn't get it, so he shows him a box filled with old tools. He says it's odd for him to beg for rusty weapons, since he was just setting them aside to sell later. These things would never even get a second look. The protagonist reaches in and confirms that everything is set up just as he planned. Gyronox spots the weapon and shakes his head, saying he didn't make it because it was already sitting in the warehouse when he arrived, and he's completely clueless about how it got there. He considered tossing it as junk, but he decided to keep it anyway. The main character agrees to grab the dagger as well. Gynox is surprised and offers to sell him only the broken weapons for just 2 gold, giving him the dagger for free. The hero figures it's a steal, since if people knew what these weapons really are, he'd never find them for less than 200 gold. But more than anything else, he was fixated on the blacksmith. So he talks about his failing business once more and makes him a deal. Shut down the shop to become his own personal blacksmith. Gianox says this came out of nowhere and he just doesn't know what to do about it. He isn't completely opposed to shutting down, but doing it so suddenly feels wrong. The hero steps forward to tell his own name first. He is the unbreakable spear protecting the South and the fierce guardian of House Rocks. Gianox is stunned when he hears the name of the young master of the Maris family. He then dropped to his knees, begging the Lord for forgiveness, shocked that he had ever ended up in such a dirty place. The protagonist asks him to stand up, but Gianox insists he's comfortable right now and tells him to speak freely. The protagonist agrees to stay down, but insists on getting up again, convinced he can't shake his old feudal ways. Gianox questions why he should hire a humble blacksmith like me, but I tell him it's because of my special gift. The blacksmith claims he doesn't have that tool and says his master used to beat him every single day. He wonders if he's been trained just like a tough Spartan soldier. He told me that he had walked past many forges and seen all kinds of weapons today, but the ones he made were truly special. He took great care of them and never stopped trying to help. His swords were made with such care, especially the handles, so they would never slip in battle. Watching his dedication, he knows one day he'll awaken a truly special gift. The hero wonders if he can truly win him over. Gianox said he'd follow the young master, but the real Gianox wasn't the trash that everyone talked about, so the protagonist asked if he meant that rumor. No matter what happens, he's going to teach the blacksmith a fun trick. He presses his fingertip against the dagger and commands it to wake with his blood, for it is the legendary relic known as Agnes of a Million Forms. The weapon floats up and slips right out of the protagonist's hand. The blacksmith stares at it, wondering just what that thing is. It felt like a legendary sword, and Yurin believes the hero was meant to find it. The system asks if he wants to make a soul contract with Agnes, and the young man says yes. The soul changes shape and speaks with a strange new voice. He wonders in disbelief what this thing is and who he thinks he is to make a deal with it, especially since he has no talent to give. The hero feels bad that he has so little magic power, yet he still talks as if he's better than everyone else. The sword grumbled that a useless guy like him was trying to make a contract with it. Anyway, they want to know how he found out about its secret enchantment. He answers that he heard it from a great prophet, only to realize later that he must have made it up just to fit his story together. Agnes wondered how a great prophet could ever talk to someone so useless. Yet she knew he had to know about its powers, which the protagonist confirmed, for Agnes was a free-form weapon that could split into two bodies and turn into any weapon the user imagined. In the tale, the hero fights with a sword and a shield. Even if your sidearm is lost, it'll just bounce back to the main body. Agnes insists he can't use it because it only works with magic. This is supposed to make him quit. The protagonist stayed quiet, silently wishing she was the noisy kind. He points to the weapon, imagining he can wear it like a ring. Agnes complained that the heat made her feel like she was melting, while the protagonist thought that her inner energy worked perfectly with mana. Then he shouts out for Gianox. He asks how long he should stay, and the blacksmith says 2 days will be plenty. In just 2 days, when the sun goes down, the protagonist will meet him in the castle's big center park. While walking there, he hears a familiar voice. Ilya asks what's happening and why he's there, leaving the protagonist confused because the scene in Central Park looks strangely familiar. That's the moment the hero finally meets Ilya for the first time. The girl asks if there is something wrong with the urine, and he apologizes, thinking the original story has changed. Ilya jumps off her horse and asks why he was there. The protagonist answers, explaining he was just searching for a blacksmith. She wonders why they have so few rocks when a rock family used to have many. He let his need for a new hire speak through his urine. She said she would have helped if he'd asked sooner, but he'd already found someone great. Just as he stepped forward, Gianox called out, "Young master," and when asked if he'd been waiting long, the protagonist simply smiled, saying, "No, I arrived exactly when you needed me." He steps forward to introduce his fiancée, Ilya, right when someone shouts for the team leader. Just as they were about to head out, he couldn't help but wonder who that person was. Ilya summons Musk and brings out her fiancé, Yurin Rux. He whispers the name over and over, his voice shaking with terror. He claims it's amazing to find a Marquis Rox family member here, and he introduces himself as the commander of the Marcus family's 5th Division of Knights. His name is Musk Malone, and the hero is happy to finally meet him. He knew enough to see that this guy was just a boring extra with a grating personality. In the tale, Musk and his knights had to push through a crowd of kids who stood in their way. The hero jumped in a fight, but Ilya arrived right at the last second to end the chaos, and that moment is how their friendship began. But the real point is that the hero meant to save Ilya from danger couldn't just wait around, so he had to step in himself. He's stuck with one choice. He can't let her die. He yells at the girl and asks her which way she's heading. Ilya explains that her knights were sent to clear out the growing horde of orcs swarming ASU Castle. The protagonist asks to tag along with her to train in real combat and test his skills, and Ilya questions why he wants to go. Ilya warns that it's dangerous, but the protagonist just shrugs and says he's good at running. The girl pauses, convinced she agreed, and orders Sir Mus to get a horse. But he argues that with orcs nearby, they can't be careless, especially since he can't sense any mana from her and has no duty or wish to protect her. Ilya calls out his name one last time. Sir Musk, this is a command. He must shut up and get to work. Musk quietly agrees and promises to get it ready if that's what they want. He just did it, radiating a deadly aura as he looked back. The protagonist and Ilya just stared at each other without saying a word. As the day wears on, she warns him that it's getting dangerous and tells her fiancé to keep close. Yurin nods in agreement, tells Gyronox to hold on tight, and eagerly accepts the young master's command. So the army steps forward and starts moving ahead. Ahead, Ilya calls out that they'll break into groups of 5 to hunt down the orc village. They must wait to strike, retreating instead to signal if they find it. So they split up and she leads her group down one path before turning back. They keep moving forward as the sun slips away and darkness takes over. A soldier noted that the tracks were too wide apart to follow and that darkness was falling. So he asked what they should do next. Ilya admits they have no choice but to turn back for now. Suddenly, a loud noise freezes the group in their tracks. That red flash in the sky was a signal flare. Then one more came from a different direction, along with others from faraway places. Ilya asks how many they've seen so far, and while the count stands at 5, Yuris thinks to himself that it's really only 4 since he hasn't signaled his own. The leader points toward the northwest desert, and they all mount up to ride that way. As they draw nearer, Ilya spots something strange. Every single soldier, she had died. The people in her group are absolutely shocked and terrified. Their armor has melted away, leaving them to wonder what could have struck them so hard. Ilya shouted for them to move toward the bright flare coming from the south. They ride off in that direction as fast as they can. When she gets there, she discovers the exact same thing. Every single one of her soldiers has fallen. Her friend urges them to rush to the next spot, but Yurin steps in to say they can't leave just yet. Ilya doubts this and cries out her husband's name. The hero screams that the orcs are picking off the soldiers one by one, and at this speed, there's no way they can win. They have to call off the mission and shoot up a signal flare to pull their team back together right here. One of her soldiers whispers for him to be quiet, reminding him that he doesn't know how to lead a charge like this. This whole mess started because of a punk like him, and Yurin thinks the original story also blamed the main character. He's been cursed by readers for dragging them through such a frustrating plot, and is now having a nervous breakdown just thinking about it. Musk claims he knows nothing about fighting, but the protagonist tells him to shut up, leaving the soldier completely stunned. Suddenly, he crumbles to the floor in agony, causing Ilya to scream in shock. She shouts to her fiancé, while he warns his underling to know his place. Musk realizes his mistake and pleads for forgiveness. As the hero claims he's been watching, he turns to Ilya and wonders why she can't listen, just like in the original tale where she got lost in her own thoughts. Yurin urges her to decide for herself if this is truly the right moment. Ilya admits she wasn't calm like he said she should be. They have to shoot the blue flare right now to call everyone here. Moments later, the signal explodes into the sky, lighting up the whole forest. The group is in charge of the Yurin. Gyronox told everyone that the young master was absolutely amazing. He forced them to move exactly as he wanted, but the hero just shrugged and said it was nothing. The blacksmith says the soldiers will come back, but Yurin doubts they'll all make it, blaming it on that bastard Kerda. Gyronox shouts to the young master, asking why he's still waiting around. The protagonist nods and says, "A real battle," as a squad member sprints up, shouting for the leader to flee immediately. Ilya looks suspicious and lifts her sword toward the sound. A huge army of orcs is marching toward them. Musk griped that there were just an insane number of monsters out there. Ilya freezes in shock and apologizes to Yurin, admitting they're about to die because of her. The hero nods and says it's all good. She tells him they won't die here and asks what her fiancé is going to do. He calls Agnes over to test the 2 days of hard work, using the fake body to fire black iron pellets. He had just gained a 3-star skill called Black Iron Explosion from his new body, but he hadn't even had a chance to try it out yet. He then tosses the pellet at them, and it bursts with huge power. The ball smacks an orc's axe, and they laugh until a massive explosion erupts, wiping out many of them in one hit, after which the hero waves his hand to send the fiery blast back to them. Thinking Agnes's power mixed perfectly with his own, the other orcs rush at him, but he simply tosses the ball again, triggering another huge explosion that makes Ilya ask what he just threw. The hero claims his black iron spheres will be explained later, even though the horde of orcs is now almost gone. Ilya turns to her army and asks what they are doing, reminding them that they can win this battle. This is our moment to finally put down the last of the orc horde. Ilya dashes forward at the monsters and chops off one of their heads. With a lot of hard work, her team finally manages to break through another one. One of the watching orcs freezes in shock as he suddenly meets a reddish figure right before him. He looks up in fear right as the shadowy figure clamps a huge hand down on his head. Suddenly, Ilya and her whole army spin around to face the danger. She gazes at that strange object, trying to guess what it could possibly be. The monster was absurdly huge and had just blown the orc's head apart. The hero believes he has finally made it to his destination. That was Karuta, the mighty orc warrior everyone talked about. If they don't catch this bastard now, they'll all be dead. Karuta lets out a roar that drives everyone nearby to their breaking point. He plants his sword, springs into the air, and flies toward Ilya. The girl tries to dodge, but her fiancé grabs her, shouting at her to stop standing still and pulling her right out of the way of the attacks. He says they nearly lost their lives. Ilya stands frozen in shock as she realizes her lieutenants are gone. Karuta lets out a deafening roar while locking eyes with the protagonist. Suddenly, a black iron explosion of urine blasts right at him. As the blast hits the orc's neck, Karuta stands unharmed and lets out another roar. As he walks toward the heroes, he whispers something to himself. Urine wonders if the plan failed, since the setup was for an orc warrior with skin as hard as steel. Ilya screams at the man she hates, wondering how he could ever be so bold to steal her men's lives. She lets her sword's power surge through her, declaring she will never forgive this. Then she dashes forward with her amazing speed and skill. She met the orc warriors head-on, her sword locked in a fierce clash with theirs, matching their strength blow for blow. Karuta stays calm, blocking every attack without ever hitting back. The team cheered for their leader, calling her awesome. Yurin believed that, as expected of Ilya, the Sword Queen's flaw had finally surfaced, yet this was only the start of the story, for she was already strong enough to force Karuta into such a desperate state that she could even slice through his armor and skin. When a monster finally feels real pain, it snaps into a rage that makes the girl notice it for the first time. He roars loudly as his power fills the air, leaving Ilya amazed at how he can do it. Karuta glances aside and slashes his sword so fast that Ilya is forced to block, just like in the original tale where Ilya ends up defeated. The soldiers rush forward to look after their team leader. Ilya says it feels like a humiliation, yet she is powerless to defeat this monster. They must run to live, yet the hero steps up to fight the battle. The orc roars a warning to Ern in a guttural, beastly language. Meanwhile, the hero grabs his dagger, aims for a quick throw, and blasts straight at the creature. Karuta easily sidesteps the blow. Yurin thought the dagger was gone with one hit, just as he planned, but the monster roared again and got confused when it noticed something. On its shoulder guard, bits of a black iron blast remained, sparking a huge chain reaction. Karuta takes a hard hit that leaves his right arm useless. The hero admits his first throw was a fake, but he was so focused on blocking the front hit that he didn't see the one coming from behind. His skin felt like hard steel, yet the rest of his body seemed soft and weak. His only weakness was still that crack in the armor, so he couldn't just shoot at it. The monster shakes with fear as it sees the hero's plan. Then it lunged at him with raw, automatic power. It tries to swipe across horizontally, but Yurin slips away just in time. The monster lunges to strike once more, but he dodges every time as Yurin twirls his dagger, puzzling over the beast's next move. Right then, the creature's face is blasted by another explosion. The protagonist admits that's all it fears, but he won't let it catch him so easily. The orc turns his head to stare right at Gynox. Then it walks toward the man while the hero screams for it to stop. Karuta jumps straight at the blacksmith. Frustrated with his predicament, the protagonist unleashes his inner power, pouring every bit of strength he has into the draconic steps to save himself. The monster lunges to smash the blacksmith, but the hero slams into it with such insane speed that it leaves a blur in its wake. The explosion crashes into the earth with a mighty thud, and Karuta spins around to face it. Ilya insists it couldn't be done, claiming the speed he just showed was truly unbelievable. The hero stops the battle and shouts for Agnes. One of the Tang clan's secret deadly tricks was a terrifying weapon called the Bloody Flower Butterfly. He then fires the curve shot right at the orc. A butterfly drifts gently toward the orc. It glides through the air with a smooth, gentle touch. Ilya calls it a perfect strike as the orc shakes with fear. The orc swings its sword to block the butterfly, but the small creature dodges every blow until it slips past the defense, touches the orc's chest, and sends a scream of agony through its body that ends in a massive explosion, leaving Yurin looking on with fear and Ilya standing in stunned amazement. The hero wasn't certain, but the sheer power he poured into the bloody flower butterfly was far too strong for an orc warrior's chest to withstand, and it felt absolutely overwhelming. Musk declares the battle won, but Ilya insists it isn't over yet because small orcs are still wandering around. She orders her troops to finish the job. Jiox thanked the young master for saving him, and the protagonist realized that their first real battle had ended safely. That night at the army camp, the protagonist asks if Ilya was hurt, and she admits she isn't okay, but says she can't complain since she owes him. The protagonist says it's totally fine for them to help each other, which makes perfect sense given what she asked earlier. He skipped sword lessons to master secret weapons, which left the girl totally baffled. He admitted it, revealing that the explosive sphere and the butterfly at the end were actually his secret weapons all along. She can't believe they were so strong. The urine shows she's struggling to accept that life is bigger than just the sword she used to think was the best weapon. The knight rides up to the captain and says he's packed a magic bag just for him. Ilya agrees, saying they might not find every body right now, but they should at least take the leader's head by driving her sword right into Karuta's chest. She lifts the head, marveling at its huge size, and warns that dropping it straight into the magic bag would make it filthy. Ilya said it's perfectly fine since those bags were built to hold enemy heads, so there's no need to feel guilty about it. But as the shadows of night stretch out, they must turn back now. So, they ride out on horseback as Musk finally tracks down the captain. She asks him where he has been since the signal fire was first lit a long time ago. The man looked puzzled and explained that orcs had ambushed them far away, causing a delay due to the battle. Ilya gets it, but she's worried because only 2 of her friends are left, and she needs to find them. Musk admits they lost because the orcs were too strong, but the captain insists on seeing the bodies and orders him to lead her there while the knight awkwardly tries to change the topic. He steps closer to her while Ilya keeps barking orders. Then he promises to explain their positions before quietly pulling out a dagger to strike Ilya, but the hero slices his arm right off. Musk crashes down and rolls on the ground, screaming from the agony. The urine report claimed he was battling orcs, yet the lack of green blood and presence of red blood proved he was working with them and betraying us from the beginning. Musk asked how he found out. Ilya draws her sword and shouts that's just how it is, dismissing his claims about the Malone family service to the Marcus family as nonsense before cutting him again. So the night goes on at the grand home in Osso Castle. Jiox shakes the young master awake, calling his name over and over. Yurin gets up to ask what he needs, but the blacksmith says it is nearly lunchtime and that Captain Ilya has arrived to see him. A girl in a black dress asks if her fiancé slept well. The main character is totally lost and doesn't know what's going on. He wonders what's going on with the outfit. Ilya insists Yurin must come to her house because her father told her to bring him. And when she asks if he will, the protagonist thinks she is the most beautiful woman in the world and promises he will definitely go. Ilya tells him she'll wait outside while he gets ready to go. Yurin pauses to realize that her good feelings are growing stronger now that he helped her out. Stepping outside, the protagonist shouts a sorry to Ilya for making her wait. As the crowd cheered for the iron-hearted knight, Miss Ilya, who had taken down the orc all by herself, they knew that every bit of that glory belonged to her. Yurin believed her title was earned for refusing to quit, even when death was close, just like in the book. The crowd cheered that he was the Iron Mage, the Lord Yurin, and that he was incredibly handsome. The protagonist is puzzled, guessing that soldiers who watched him play with metal balls thought he was a wizard, so they started calling him that. Just as Ilya shouts his name, telling him she's mentioned this before, but thanking him for saving her twice, the moment hangs heavy with gratitude. She said there was no need to bring it up because it was just a natural thing to do. The girl says that at first light, she walked into the woods to pull the dead bodies away from the terrible battlefield. It broke our hearts to see all their bodies scattered across the forest floor. Then she realized that without him stepping in yesterday, they would have ended up in the same bad spot. The hero stares at the ground, deep in thought. Ilya vows to push herself harder and grow stronger. She would crush every single opponent and never lose again. While Yurin is convinced her talent has finally bloomed like a beautiful flower. The mages open a gateway to the Marcus estate while Ilya tells the group that since the distance was short, her father simply sent his family's own mages to do it. She tells them to leave right now as they cross paths in the middle of the portal. As the mages start their spells, the teleportation magic is thrown into action. Yurin and Jiox are shocked, while Ilya says it's been a long time since he last visited her land. The protagonist feels the world spin and the scenery shift before he even blinks, leaving him a little dizzy. Juranox guessed that every noble family must have such massive houses, and it looked like the hero was being invited over for a meal. In the story, the hero used to only eat simple soup from the mayor's family, but today he was finally going to taste some real fancy food. The Mares warmly welcomes his son-in-law and invites Yurin inside. Yurin tries to bow, but gets told to just sit down since there's no need for all the formal stuff. The young man nods in agreement and sits down opposite Ilya. Marcus explains that before she's his fiancée, she is his daughter, so he thanks him first for saving her life. The hero just shrugged and said it was nothing big, just something he had to do. Then the food arrives, and the protagonist holds their breath in eager anticipation to see what's served. It was the Marcus family's own special chira soup. The Marquis reveals that, just like the Rox family, they keep a secret recipe and always eat chira after a fight. So he should enjoy it, while Yurin thanks him for the food and tries to convince himself he can do it. Just as they were eating, the Marquis suddenly asks them when they plan to get married. The hero is lost until he reads the sign that tells him he is actually speaking about his daughter. Yurin thinks it's just another test because the Marquis seems to hate him, even though he saved his daughter and his affection score is still stuck at 10. He tells her he would marry her right now if only he could, and Ilya blushes at his bold words. The protagonist kept saying he wasn't the family heir yet, noting how his annoying past had made everyone look down on him. To earn Ilya's love, he vowed to change himself so that when he became heir, he could finally marry her. The Marquis questions whether he truly believes it's possible to outshine his younger brother, who is seen as a genius, and step into the role of heir. Yurin says he is for sure able to do it. The Marquis laughed, confirming the rumors that he had truly changed and would now stand by him. But he quickly shifts the talk, mentioning that a message from Wellington arrived before he got there. The Rox family already knew he was coming because magic sent the news to them. The protagonist asks what his father said, and the Mar replies that they should talk after they eat. The protagonist gave thanks and watched Ilya eat, puzzled by her sudden bad mood. No matter what happened, he managed to leave a good impression on Marquis Marcus. In another room, the words are spoken and a mage carries the sphere to the Rox home. Suddenly, it starts showing the Lord's image, and the hero thinks it looks just like a projector or a video call. The young man cries out to his father begging for mercy, only to hear his father curse him as a brat, but the father still asks if he was hurt, and the boy says no. Just as things heat up, Wellington smoothly shifts the conversation to something else. He wants to know if it's true that he saved Ilya and took down an orc warrior. The hero smiles and says he's just been lucky. His father understands and agrees to listen to the full story when he gets back, then asks when he'll be home. Yurin makes up his mind that he'll be back in 2 days. His father tells